Meanwhile, ratings agency Moody's has warned that the worsening water crisis in India is going to disrupt farm and industry sectors both, and this could negatively impact India's sovereign credit strength eventually. This report by Moody is also saying that the water crisis can trigger inflation in food prices, something that has been a worry area. The RBI has highlighted it time and again. And possibly the Moody's report is saying that there could be a decline in income for all the affected businesses for several communities. Let's understand what Moody's is saying in this report about the water crisis in India. And he's joining us here in the Mumbai newsroom. Anurag, do tell us about the magnitude of the impact that the report is referring to clearly.
International rating agency Moody's has flagged a key climate change risk for India. This is water shortage. And Moody's has said that the water problem in India and the shrinking availability of water in India could escalate into an impact on the country's sovereign credit strength. Now, India, according to Moody's, relies heavily on monsoon rainfall for its water supplies. But in recent years, India has faced droughts, heat waves, and floods that can exacerbate the situation. Also, at the same time, as the water availability is shrinking, and we are also seeing many of the rivers in India are drying. We have the population growing in 2023. The population of India surpassed that of China to become the most populated country in the world. So growing consumption, and this is also happening at the time of rapid industrial and economic growth. India is the fastest growing major economy in the world today. And there are frequent natural disasters due to this climate change, and the problem can lead to rise in social unrest. And as food supplies and also the food production, those supply chains are threatened, there is a wider social impact because of the water problem. Now, according to Moody's, what can the policymakers and what can the companies do to tide over this problem? And Moody's says that India definitely needs more public and private investment in water management and infrastructure. Renewable energy, which is gaining ground in India in such a big way, has to see more investment. And both public and private investment in water infrastructure and renewable energy can help them mitigate the risks due to the climate change. Also, India needs a sustainable finance market that can help companies raise money from sources, including the capital markets, that can be used for better water management.
Well, the possibilities are immense. Even if we are trying to correct the big problem, the crisis looming large, and it's not like we're not facing it even in the moment. Let's discuss this threadbare about the imminent problems that emerge from water shortage. And for that, eminent author and former chairman and managing director of Exim Bank, career banker TCA Ranganathan joining us, along with Depinder Kapur, who is the director at the water program for CSE. Great to have you both, gentlemen. Thanks for making the time for being with us and discussing this problem, the water crisis, as it were, that Moody's is highlighting and red flagging. Mr. Ranganathan, in your assessment, has India largely ignored this looming water crisis that Moody's is now red flagging?
Yes, in a way. See, we are in an odd situation that we are one of the more fortunate countries as far as water availability goes. But we have been extremely relaxed about its usage. So our inefficiency of usages are very high. Water supply is actually better in India than in US or in China. Our water consumption in India is almost 760 cubic kilometers plus, whereas China is only 603 and US is only 485. So we use far more water than is essential, primarily because of investment of public goods in agriculture. So agriculture consumes a lot because we have not gone in for huge investments to promote protected agriculture and what you call drip and other forms of things. We don't have enough extension services on ground. So our agriculture water usages has been growing, and our water consumption has been growing faster than China or US. That is the essence of the crisis, not a shortage of this thing, but a misuse of existing abundance. It's a
Mr.
half
Kapur as
filled
well.
glass, not
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
Mr. Kapur, do weigh in on this. Do you think this is about mismanagement, misuse of water? Why we are in this current situation? Because every time we point towards climate change and all of that, but there is an inherent flaw in the way that we use water in India.
No, I don't agree with that. I don't think there is a problem of mismanagement. As a country, our priorities are different. Our agriculture demands are very different. Our climate is very different. So we can't make a comparison with US or even with China. Yes, there is a withdrawal, a groundwater crisis, I would say. Let's define the crisis better rather than just call it a water crisis. There is a groundwater crisis, certainly. And there is a crisis of exacerbated by climate change. We should talk about heat, I guess, more than about water at the moment. So the crisis is about groundwater. The crisis is how this heat will disrupt both industry, agriculture, service sector.
Right.
So with it comes water.
Yes, indeed. One understands that as far as groundwater is concerned, there is a crisis, like you call it. And if it is a crisis, how deep does it run, according to you, Mr. Kapur? Do you see the possibility, like this Moody's report is pointing out, the possibility of high economic volatility, of social unrest?
It's good that Moody has highlighted this, because unless it is highlighted, it is passed over. Now the crisis is actually being felt a lot in the urban areas, which it was not felt earlier. So that's another dimension of this water crisis. Earlier, we used to call droughts and water scarcity. Now water crisis is hitting city after city. And the water crisis has another dimension of flooding as well, which is, again, an impact of the climate change, the way it is happening. So we get a double whammy. We get heat, we get water scarcity, and then we get flood. And all in the cities again, mind you. So it will have a disruptive impact on the industry, on the cities functioning. And the Moody's report I was going through, it talks about actually disruption or a demand in energy use, in thermal power sector.
Yes.
I think that also is a little questionable, because if you look at the way thermal plants are in India, they are mostly in Eastern India and the Gangetic Plain, where the coal is.
Right.
Of course, there are plants in Delhi, Punjab, Western India. But the majority of coal and thermal power production is in Eastern and UP areas, which are relatively more water secure, I'm saying.
Right.
Relatively.
Right.
And I feel it's a little exaggerated to say that. But yes, the heat, the water scarcity, drought, flooding, that is a more dangerous impact, which somehow Moody has missed out in its report.
Talk about water scarcity, and I'll take that across to Mr. Ranganathan as well. The aim is always to ensure water security as much as food security, and both of them are interlinked. But there are risks if you don't work towards water security, which is, at least at this level, we are clear, looking at this report, and perhaps even earlier than that, that we don't have optimum levels when it comes to water security. Mr. Ranganathan, do you agree with that? And if so, why has that been the case, and how do we fix it?
No, I would again re-stress this thing, that the problem is, if you see the agricultural consumption of water in India versus China versus US, for the same crop yield, we use far more water. We don't have enough drip, we don't have enough sprinkler. We are mostly in flood irrigation because insufficient funding has been provided for making available these aids. And insufficient hand-holding has been provided by lack of enough extension workers on the ground. That is why agriculture is using water in a way which is a traditional way which has been going on for last several generations, several centuries. We have not changed that. We have only electrified it or mechanized, but not converted the usage pattern. If we go in for modern investments in agriculture, in water usage, by providing farmers assistance in going in for these simple techniques of drip and sprinkler irrigation,
yes,
water demand will come down. It has been experienced both in Rajasthan, in Gujarat, and other places wherever such investments have been made.
Right.
But this requires a concentrated state effort with a huge deployment of extension handholding.
But Mr. Ranganathan, when we asked,
in the last
yes, but when we asked the RBI governor specifically about, climate resilience as far as the agrarian economy, the farming in India is concerned, he did say that it is more climate resilient farming in India. Listen in exactly to what he said. I've got that soundbite.
The lot of achievements have been done, but I think there is still a lot of work to be done in the agricultural sector, especially with regard to improvement of the supply chains and the value chain framework. But I think our overall the agriculture in India has become in the recent years much more climate resilient than what it was, let's say, about 10 or 20 years ago.
Mr. Ranganathan, that's what we heard the RBI governor say. Now you tell us, have we become in farming more climate resilient? We've adapted?
No, see, what he's saying is exactly what I'm saying, but he's talking that we have progressed. Yes, we have progressed, but the progress we have made is not in comparison to what has happened in US or China. For example, our water consumption has gone up by about 2% or so in the last 30 years. US water consumption has fallen in the last 30 years. China consumption has increased by only 0.9%, despite a massive manufacturing industrialization program. They have huge amount of water which is used in the industry, but despite that, the water growth, consumption growth has not been more than 1%. This is where the problem arises, that we are not focused on efficient use as per what modern technology permits of water.
Right.
And we can easily do that with a little amount of effort. We are doing it. It's undoubted. We are improving every 5 years, every 2 years, 3 years, we are improving. But as I mentioned, it's a...
Where is the effort lacking? Mr. Ranganathan, where would you say the effort is lacking? Is it the public sector, the private sector? Because you're saying investing in technology, it's an important piece. Haven't we seen those in the 5-year plans? Haven't we seen private sector also invest and see the importance of doing so?
Technology is there. Some of our agricultural firms are exporting these same technologies worldwide. We have the technology. Technological change is know-how plus implementation. Implementation requires manpower, and manpower requires public investment of agricultural extension support people on the ground on a regular basis. And if you see the agricultural extension support we've got, it has not increased over the last 30 years. It has diminished, in fact. It has to increase as the time goes, not come down. That is how modernity comes in, by change of processes which are well available and well established and act as demonstration sites, but are not being implemented because handholding is not there.
You're saying handholding has not been there, but the question is, does private sector... Yes, but Mr. Ranganathan, and let me ask Mr. Kapur as well, how much handholding does industry require to mitigate the kind of risks that come from water shortage now or in the future? Tell us how much industry has been doing and how much further it will have to go. Mr. Kapur.
See, firstly, I would like to talk about agriculture here. Our agriculture is more climate resilient because it is drawing more groundwater and it is more dependent on irrigation. That's what the RBI governor is implying by being more climate resilient. We are not dependent on monsoon, he's saying, for a certain level of agriculture production. So that also is the crisis of our agriculture. The second crisis in agriculture is the kind of cropping we do. No amount of drip irrigation or substitute irrigation can diminish the fact that we need to change the cropping pattern and to have crops which require less water. And to that extent, enough efforts are not being made. The third point is the fact that we are not investing in watershed management. Like the way we did in the 1990s, the government of India had a large watershed program which supported water conservation at scale. It is no longer there. So where will the water conservation happen? If water conservation doesn't happen and you keep increasing agriculture production using drip irrigation or whatever, it will not solve the problem. So the industry suffers, as Moody is rightly saying, if the food production becomes unsustainable, prices rise, if the heat leads to a situation where water is also purchased, then of course the labor cost of industry goes up. It gets a double whammy. There are no consumers for its products. So unless the industry also supports an investment in water harvesting, in groundwater, in watershed management, it's not going to help it as well. If it keeps demanding more subsidies for itself, whereas the base of the pyramid is not there to support the production and consumption of industry, then we are not likely to move ahead. So then an intelligent national level approach needs to be made. In our CSC work,
yes.
we are just one more point. In our CSC work, we are also looking at urban water crisis. And we feel that the reuse of treated wastewater should be made an important aspect of addressing the water crisis, and more decentralized water supply. Water can be reused 2, 3, 4 times. It's not something which,
Does this need to be incentivized, Mr. Kapur? Or do you think that there should be penalties imposed? We've reached that stage.
See, sir, we need a reimagining of the way we manage urban water. And it's not just imagining in a poetic sense, but it means reconfiguring our water supply in a decentralized manner, co-locating our sewerage treatment plants, sewerage treated water with lakes and water bodies rejuvenation, creating 10 to 15 kilometers of decentralized water supply. If we don't do that, we waste 30-40% of urban water. And we are not reusing it. We throw it in the Yamuna or any river. So unless we seriously invest, again, I'm saying for the industry, this should be seen as an opportunity.
Right.
That we invest in reuse of treated wastewater, not in small scale, not in, water purifiers and consumer goods, but as an infrastructure investment.
We keep saying that water is the elixir of life, but at this point in time, there is so much more at stake than just about sustainability. We're talking about economic growth. We're talking about these food prices that are already soaring and are likely to go up even further. And Moody's red flagging it to say that there could be a sovereign ratings downgrade if we don't do something about our water problem and shortages that they see coming in the future that could lead to economic volatility and social unrest. Mr. Ranganathan, Mr. Kapur, thank you very much for joining us on this discussion on India Tonight.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.